what could person be looking out for if they were to shop for a sunbed with a purpose to improve both tannin, skin texture, and vitamin D production of their own body? So is there something out there that can be bought that could do both? If so, are there any parameters that they should be looking for?
Yes, there are. In fact, there's a whole website dedicated to this exact topic, and I take their product and make it slightly better. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the basics, right? When you get proper vitamin D from daylight, from sunlight, this is how it works, right? In the morning, and we've talked about this, so this will be really quick. In the morning, the first 3 hours of the day are mainly only infrared light. There's no UV light for the first 3 hours of the day for most people, unless you live like right at the equator. But even then, even at the equator, the sun comes up at like 5 a.m. and by 8 a.m., so literally 3 hours later, there's UV light. It's just earlier in the day. But if you take it from the sun rising until 3 hours later, there's only infrared light. If you're out in that light, that actually helps the skin. It sends information through the eyes if you don't have sunglasses, and through your skin if you're not wearing sunscreen and clothing, or you know, the skin that's exposed that doesn't have clothing on it, will send information to the brain to turn on specific how would I say to turn on specific mechanisms that protect the skin. They're basically getting the skin ready for what comes next, because the way it works is when there's a lot of infrared ready, there's a lot of ATP production and there's a lot of water production, right? We've talked about this in the mitochondria videos that we've done. Whenever there's ATP production, your mitochondria is also making water. Water is a red light chromophore, and it's also going to be a heat sink, right? So if you have a big pond of water, it takes a lot of energy to heat up that pond of water. That's essentially what you're creating when there's a lot of red light interacting with you. More water gets made at the cellular level, and that allows you to dissipate heat, which is what's going to come later when there's UV light, okay? UVA then comes at about the 3 hour mark after the daylight. So it goes red for 3 hours, and then it's red with UVA, and the UVA starts to prep the photoreceptors to kind of shut down a little bit or become dull a little bit, so that you don't get overwhelmed when in the middle part, the 3 hours in the middle part of the day, are lots of UVB. And that's for most of the United States, depending on the year, or not the year, the time of the year, right? If it's summertime, there'll be more than 3 hours of UVB. When UVB comes out, that's what tans the skin, okay? But UVA is incredibly important because UVA is the testing mechanism for the mitochondria to be able to go through autophagy and apoptosis correctly. We spoke about that in our video about that. So it goes infrared with UVA for about 3 hours, and then it goes infrared with UVA and UVB for about 3 hours. So if you started at the very beginning of the day until about 3 p.m., that's how it went. Infrared with UVA, infrared with UVA and UVB. And we all know that you get the best tanning effects in the middle of the day. We know that. But the problem is, if you circumvent the infrared and the UVA from a traditional tanning bed, then you end up with a higher risk profile, because now you can damage the skin without creating a lot of water that I just spoke about. That means that you're not going to be able to dissipate heat very well. What happens when you can't dissipate heat? You get burned. You get blisters, right? So if you do it in this sequence of, hey, I'm going to get, let's just hypothetically say, it's not direct one-to-one like I'm going to explain it, but it is similar. It's very close. If you get about 1 hour of infrared light in the morning, and then about 1 hour of infrared with UVA, then you have about 1 hour of middle of the day infrared, UVA, and UVB, where you actually are protected, right? Like your skin has prepared for that level of heat production and heat absorption from that really strong UVB light. So again, it's not exactly one-to-one. You know, if you spend 1 hour in the morning, then you have 1 hour of no sunscreen needed in the middle of the day, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close, right? And the more the better, right? So for example, when I was in El Salvador for 8 weeks, that's exactly how I started my day. My office was outside, so I would see the sunrise, and I just worked all day, all morning, basically. So from sunrise about 5:30 in the morning, all the way until 10 a.m., I was just outside. And then I would take a little break, eat some breakfast, and then I would go out to the beach at about noon, and I would just stay there for 3 or 4 hours, playing and laying around and whatnot, and no sunburning. And that's not just me, that's my kids, that's my wife, the same, because it was easy to just be outside, right? So if you're outside a lot and you start early in the day, you photo protect yourself from those really aggressive UV lights. Now, what does this have to do with a tanning bed? Just like I said, if you isolate UVA and UVB, you're not creating that water. But they do have products, and I'm going to share them with you, that already have the correct amount of UVA and UVB. Let's go with share. You might need to let me.
All good.
Oh, I got it. Yep. Excellent. So right here, there's a company called Spurti lamps, and they're specifically made with the right ratio of UVA and UVB, depending on what you want. So if you're somebody that really wants to make sure that you're getting plenty of vitamin D, there is literally the vitamin D sun lamp. Okay. Now, what this lamp has here is 80% UVB and 20% UVA. And that's going to bias, obviously, way more UVB, which is the thing that acts on creating vitamin D. That's why it's called the vitamin D lamp. But I actually prefer their other product called the Fiji Sunlamp. Okay, the Fiji Sunlamp is tipped a little bit. It's actually goes the other way on that ratio. If I can find the description here, here we go. So here we go. So it goes UVA 75%, UVB 25%. And that's actually closer to the ratio that you get from the sun. The problem is it's a lamp, right? So you're going to tan less and you're going to create less vitamin D because it's a lamp, right? It's not the sun, but the ratio is correct. So I'd rather use this lamp. And if you have to, buy two of them, 2 or 3 of them, right? They are small lamps. Now in the US, you can actually find some tanning beds that have this setup. They have the right ratio of UVA and UVB. In Europe, they've passed some laws in the last 5 years where there's no longer UVB. There's no tanning beds unless they go aftermarket and modify them themselves. You cannot go into a tanning bed in the EU and have UVB. You're only getting UVA. So you're not really going to get vitamin D or tanning effect very well. You'll get some, but you won't get the most. So this is the product that I would use. Now, how do we make it better, right? I just talked about if you overuse this, you're going to increase your risk unnecessarily for damage because you don't have any infrared here. So this is where a combination therapy is very, very good. Buy a couple of these, or if you're lucky enough to live somewhere where you can find yourself a tanning bed that already has the correct ratio of UVA and UVB, 75%, 25%, like I have shown here. If you're lucky in the US, you might find some of these. They are out there. I do know that. And what you do, if you have a tanning bed, or if you're using these, you supplement them with an infrared device. That way you are getting some infrared, and I would go as far as, and you can see here the wattage, right? So it's going to put out many light spectrums. So it's right around 150 watts of these UV lights. So you want more than 150 watts of infrared light. You want more red light than you do the UVA and UVB to be protective. And so you would pick probably a light here in the $500 range. Let's just click on this one right here, the EMR Tech one. That one puts out 500 watts, right? So you could use 1 or 2 of these lamps, these UV lamps, combined with something like one of these, and you're now going to get a really good ratio of light that's actually protective and not damaging. And at the same time, you're going to be getting vitamin D, and you're going to be getting tanning. Again, this is considering all factors, right? Not just the vitamin D factor, but also what's the risk of getting that vitamin D from that particular lamp, right? Versus the sun. I can tell you right now, the sun is going to be the best because it has all of these in the right ratio. So if you're actually outside earlier in the day, you're being actually protected. You're setting up your biology to be actually protective against UVB, and you're only getting the benefits. You have to kind of go out of your way, because that ideally somebody comes out with a tanning bed that has 70% infrared light, and then the remaining 75% of the bulbs are UVA and UVB. If somebody could come up with that invention, that would be gold. That would be not just great for vitamin D and tanning, but also protective and also skin hydrating. Remember what I said about infrared light? A lot of the benefits of infrared light is more ATP production, so you're going to feel more energized. But when there's ATP production, there's also water production, so you're hydrating cells, including skin cells. So if you do, and most people kind of understand this, right? If you do a lot of tanning with tanning beds, you tend to have kind of a leathery look to your skin, because you're drying it out, because UV light doesn't penetrate into the cell membranes. It only acts at the surface level, and it kind of dries out that skin if there isn't a lot of water production. So the infrared light is crucial to make sure that that doesn't happen, and at the same time it's photoprotective, and you'll get energized. If somebody, and again, I have clients that take these, they're lucky enough that they have tanning beds locally where they live that have UVA and UVB together. So they'll actually just take their red light with them, and they'll set it up on the side, and they'll get into the tanning bed themselves, right? They just, they ask the manager of the tanning salon, hey, can I bring my infrared therapy device in there? And they'll just shine it in from one side of the tanning bed while they're in the tanning bed. So they're getting both infrared and the UV stimulus. And the first thing they say is, I feel even better than when I do just the tanning bed. I feel way more energized. They're like, it's almost like the same effect that I have when I do infrared therapy, but I also feel almost euphoric. And that concept of euphoria actually comes from the POMC gene, the pro-opiomelanocortin. When you have all the right light spectrums, you actually end up making a pain modulating called beta endorphin. So you get a lot of beta endorphin release along with ATP production. So you feel kind of euphoric. You feel incredibly less pain if you're somebody that deals with any kind of pain, and you feel energized. So that would be that is my hack currently. But if a company were to make a bed, then that's what I would endorse for sure. Something that has all three light spectrums.
And what you just described is usually what I suggest people who have joint issues after training. Hey, can you go for a walk outside for 15-20 minutes? And usually they report, hey, my elbows don't hurt anymore. So it's very interesting to kind of see how it works. Would you suggest to have this done in specific time of the day? Let's say somebody has had a stressful day or worked out or something like that. Would you suggest it before stressful event or after?
I would say it could be done either point, but I would actually say if you actually have pain issues like with training and stuff like that, I would say after training. But honestly, you could do it before and after. Now, the only caveat, like it's easier to tell you when not to do it, and that would be at night. Don't do it at night, because any UV stimulation at night is the same as blue light stimulation, right? Again, we talk a lot about blue light and how it's damaging, and electromagnetic fields and stuff like that, and how that's damaging. Well, the same thing can happen if you're incorporating the wrong sunlight spectrum at the wrong time of day, right? Like I have a UV lamp on right now, right? So this is UVA, but I only have it on in the morning and during the day. As soon as it's like 5 p.m. here, this goes off. I don't actually introduce it, because that would be sending the wrong circadian rhythm signal to the body. So for all intents and purposes, if it's during the day, it really doesn't matter. But if you do suffer from any kind of pain, or you just get beat up really easily from stressful things, like maybe it's work, right? Like literally, maybe it's work. So you're going to work, you get your job is really stressful. Then yeah, I would actually do this therapy right after you get done with work. It would be like your wind down decompression time, so that you can kind of recharge and kind of basically feel better and kind of let that stress go. Yeah.
So the quick summary is that most likely there is nothing already set up. So there is a little bit of handcrafting involved to get set up everything for yourself. And ideally stick to sun as much as you can.
Yeah, that makes it cheap and it makes it effective. Now I do realize that, you know, people right now in the northern hemisphere don't have that option, right? The sun is not strong enough, so that's where this little hack comes in handy. And if you happen to be lucky enough to live in the US or places where they have tanning beds with both UVA and UVB light bulbs, going there is great. And I would just take your own infrared therapy device with you. That's actually a very simple solution. If you already have a red therapy device and you happen to find a salon that has both UVA and UVB bulbs, that's a really simple, easy to do 2-3 times out of the week whenever you're wanting to do that.
If you go for something for your garage, home, whatever, you find one with UVA, UVB ratios you mentioned before, buy a separate infrared light and you're set for days.
Yeah. And I've been working with people and there are infrared beds, right? There are infrared beds. So the bulbs are correct. And so the only difference is the bulbs are a special connection. So if you happen to find a regular tanning bed that has the right connections, you can actually modify one of those yourself. So you can take all, you know, the right amount of UV bulbs out and put infrared bulbs in it, and you can set one up yourself. I do know a couple people that have done that for themselves. But you know, you're just not gonna. I haven't found a product that you can just buy that has that set up correctly.
Not yet.
Not yet. Correct.
So
Yes.
thanks for your time, David, and catch you in the next video.
Yes. Thank you.